Good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Oscar. I am with the Gwinnett County Public Library, and twice a year we are honored to work with SCBWI, the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and we host wonderful workshops with them. And of course, we're not able to do so now live, but we are doing it virtually, and we really appreciate them accommodating us on this format. This is, of course, Zoom. Most people are familiar, but I would be remiss if I didn't cover very quickly just a couple of things. You should have been muted when you came into the meeting. We are unable to mute you. If and when Rhonda is ready for questions, you will have to unmute yourself. And if you move your cursor along the bottom of your screen back and forth, you'll see the mute button, the stop video button, and the all-important chat button. If you click on that, and I hope that you all will, the chat box should appear on your screen. That's where you can submit your questions or your comments, like beautiful tree or whatever, your questions for the authors. So you're going to see that there. There's also a little arrow in the chat box, so you are able to communicate directly with any one of the other guests or with the group as a whole. Okay, so your moderator today is Rhonda Knight. She is a liaison for SCBWI. She is also a radio and TV talk show host, an actor, and an author. Her work has earned her recognition as one of the 2019 Indie Authors of the Year. Her current projects are books aimed at children who are 5 to 10 years old, and they seek to help those children deal with subjects such as depression, disability, suicide, and depression. I give you today's moderator, Ms. Rhonda Knight.
Thank you so much, Denise. You're awesome. Well, welcome everybody. I'm excited that you're here, and I know you're gonna love these beautiful authors I brought together. This is the Society of Children Book Writers Workshop, and this one is called The Inspiration for the Author in You. That's right, the author in you. So we're hoping that when we share some information with you, it's going to spark that extra thing that you need to take you to the next level. And we definitely want you to, if you're interested in writing children's books, to be a part of the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about that organization as we get near the end. So stay tuned to every moment, because we've got a lot of exciting things that's going to be going on, okay? So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and I am going to start with Sachetta Ravel. And just a little bit about Sachetta. She's an award-winning food and travel writer. She has traveled to almost 100 countries, you guys, and she's the author of the Beatos Goes To series, and it is a series of children's picture books. Her mission is to teach kids about different cultures, embrace diversity, and work towards a peaceful world. How awesome is that? Sachetta has also spoken at the United Nations, New York Times, the U.S. embassies, and schools around the world. Welcome, Sachetta. How are you?
I'm great, Rhonda. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Hey, when you wake up, it's a blessing, so I'm happy.
That's true.
Yes, ma'am. So, Sachetta, tell us a little bit about yourself beyond the things that I just mentioned there, which is awesome. You've done a lot of great things. Tell me about Sachetta.
Thank you, Rhonda. So I grew up in India, and I moved to Atlanta when I was 17. And I pursued a career in finance, but realized that my heart was really not in there. I really love exploring the world, meeting people, understanding cultures and how people live. So I was one of those people who transitioned from a corporate job to becoming a full-time writer. And I didn't think there was a writer in me. I thought I was supposed to get a job like most people, earn a living, have benefits. But that was the happiest decision, the best decision I have made. And yes, I don't earn as much as I did in my finance job, but I am much happier now.
I love that, and I think that's a good thing for people to understand, when you feel very passionate about something, go for it. You know, get out there and do what makes you happy. You know, a lot of times it's not about the money. Sometimes we have to do the thing that's within us that'll bring joy. So that was a beautiful uh, that's beautiful information you shared with us, is what I'm trying to say. So let me ask you, did why did you make your cat Beato as the main character in your books? What kind of
That's
cat
a
is
really
Beato?
good question. So, yeah, so my books all are called Beato Goes To, and they are all named after different countries. There are 5 books, 5 different countries.
Hmm.
And I'm actually the one who was traveling to these places. But when I started writing the series, I wanted the main character, to not be me. I wanted it to be somebody who people cannot really identify with, as in terms of ethnicity or religious background or racial similarities. So a cat, you cannot really identify what race a cat is, but a cat is curious and he likes to explore and he wants to go meet people. So it makes it a little bit more fun for kids. Plus, they are seeing the lens through a neutral lens, the world. So that was why I decided to use my cat. And my cat is actually quite a character. He's a 20-pounder
Oh,
Norwegian forest cat with 7 toes. And
wow.
he just loves people. He loves greeting everybody who walks in the house. He acts like a dog. So it was always, you, as an author, you have some inspiration about the character and you build around it. So my
Mhm.
observation of Beato also helped me in developing that.
Awesome. So you've been to over 100 countries, and you have 5 books now. Are there new books in the making for new
Yes,
countries?
Rhonda, so I have been writing about food and travel for almost 15 years, and I
Hmm.
have written about all these countries. So the stories are there in my head. But I also want to go back, revisit these places through more of a children's mindset. And unfortunately, with this year, with the pandemic, a lot of my travels were put on hold. I was
Hmm.
supposed to go back to South Africa and do more research
Hmm.
and have that book out this year, but now it's going to get postponed. But yeah, as long as there are kids interested in reading about other countries, there are so many, I will keep writing about them.
Awesome. So I do know that you are an award-winning food and travel writer, but what inspired you to start doing children's books after writing about travel and food?
Yes, that's a great question. A lot of people ask me that, and writing for kids is so different than writing for adults. I
Hmm.
never really thought that I'm going to be a children's book writer. It was actually during the holidays a few years ago, I was writing an assignment for the Huffington Post about kids' products and books, gifts that would help them learn about other cultures. And I was sitting in my couch right here in this living room with my laptop and my cat doing this research, looking through all the library systems and schools and talking to other parents. And I didn't find a whole lot of books out there beyond an occasional Native American or Jewish culture. There was 2 books on Afghan girls that I found. So it was very limited. And that's where, the laptop, the cat, the inspiration kind of like hit. And they're like, I have these stories in me. I have met all these kids from different cultures, and they all have such interesting things to talk about. So maybe I can be the one who can write about these children and inspire other kids also to learn about each other. So that's how I started.
Well, I love that, Sachetta, because I think that it's really, really important that we help kids understand diversity. So through your books, they can live that and learn about different cultures and have a better understanding of other people. And so I commend you on that. That is awesome. So I do want to ask you this. So tell me something about you that most people don't know that encouraged you also to get into writing.
Well, I have been writing since I was a kid. So I
Mhm.
think there's always a writer in you. You just have to find it. As a child, I used to write short stories just for my school magazine. When I was at Georgia State University, even though I was studying finance, I was contributing to our school newspaper. And
Mhm.
I would do some reviews on whatever events were taking place in town. And then while I had my corporate job, I started writing restaurant reviews for a local magazine. So it's kind of built since I was little, my whole writing path. And I would
Mhm.
advise everybody else to don't ever stop writing. Even if you think your material is not really good, you don't want to show it to anyone, you don't want to read it yourself, who's going to read this? Just give it a try, give it an effort, and maybe the book is not going to come out next year. Maybe it will come out in 10 years, but you just have to feed that passion till it's the right time, and you will be able to find your authentic voice.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I love that. And that's some great advice. I hope you guys are listening to what she had to say because I think everything you gave us was very important. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead, guys. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit, excuse me, raspy today. Had a long day of Zoom meetings yesterday, so we know how that can go. But this is the society we're living in right now. So, hey, we embrace it. All right. Thank you so much, Sachetta. And now we are going to
Thank
go
you,
to our
Rhonda.
second. You're welcome, sweetheart. We're going to go ahead and move to our second author, which is Jenny Cote. And she is an amazing lady. She's written The Amazing Tales of Max and Liz, which is an epic order of the seven. And she's also done an audio book. It's called The Ark, the Reed, and the Fire Cloud, and that can be, listened to or purchased on Audible. Jenny is nearing her pre-production too for her first book, The Ark, the Reed, and the Fire Cloud, as an animated featured film, and that's going to be released at Christmas 2022. That's amazing, awesome, Jenny. And Jenny's second audio book, I can't talk today, for her novel, The Voice, The Revolution, and The Key, is launching on Audible Books this week, the one she's holding up right there. And she has also been interviewed on Fox and Friends. So welcome, Jenny. How are you today?
I am blessed, Rhonda. Thank you so much for having me. It's a beautiful day and just great, always great to hang out with fellow authors and readers. So
Yes. Awesome. You're right about that. And we're blessed to have you here.
thank
Well,
you.
Jenny, let's tell our viewers a little bit about you too. How would you describe you?
Oh, I'm all over the map. I'm just this crazy curly headed girl that's just, doing what I love. And thank you so much for your program. I tell you, I was echoing and saying amen to so much of what she said because truly, I didn't set out to be an author, just like
Mhm.
you. And it's so fun when you land in that place of your passion because when you're doing what you're passionate about, and
Mhm.
and for we authors, it's writing. It's more like play. I mean, yes, it's blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like work. And I write about my books are about talking animals that go through time. You want me to share a little bit about the kind of the summary of what I write?
Well, we're going to ask you some questions and we can
Okay.
come back to that
All right.
too. So, did you know you wanted to be an author when you were a kid, or when did this passion happen? We
No.
heard from Sachetta when she started, she knew she wanted to write, but when did it happen for you?
Right. What that is so funny. I never knew I was going to be a writer when I grew up, or I don't even know if I've
Okay.
still grown up yet. But when I was 8 years old, I wrote stories about talking fruit. And I was always writing and creating and so forth. And so after I became an author and I met Phil Vischer, I said, I wrote Fruity Tales long before you wrote Veggie Tales. And he said, well, I published one. I'm like, oh. So, but back then when I was an 8-year-old and I would design greeting cards and all that, but I was all over the map. I wanted to be a marine biologist and swim with dolphins. I wanted to design greeting cards. I wanted to be a singer on Broadway. And so, you know, sometimes you don't know what your path is. So when it came time to go to college, University of Georgia, I didn't even know what to major in. And my parents said, Jenny, why don't you go into marketing? You've always had money. You always had an angle going, always selling something. And so I did. And I got my undergraduate at Georgia, my master's in marketing at Georgia State. And I went into the healthcare field. I was actually working at Scottish Rite Children's Medical Center, which became CHOA. And it was then, you know, I was like, I love working with kids, but I'm like, this isn't what I was wired to do. And that's when I got the idea for my books. And I switched as well from the corporate world to this writing world, that everything I learned, and I'm sure you would echo this corporately, you need marketing, you know, to be an author. So it was really cool how I was prepared as this author bubbled up inside of me. And now it's just a blast to do what I do.
Well, I love that. And you know what? It's so funny because I definitely believe that the gift that you have inside is something you had been doing all along. And then you kind of led to the things that's going to bring you to the point where you have everything you need at your fingertips because of your experience, so that when you walk in that passion, then it's all there for you. So that's awesome. So let me ask you, I understand that you're an author because of your dog and cat. I love that my first two authors, their animals kind of really help them want to, you know, include them or, you know, be a part of it. So are they the true mastermind behind your books?
They are. I can't take credit for this at all. So I am standing here before you today because of my dog and my cat, my Scottish Terrier named Max, and my black cat named Liz. Liz is petite though. She's not a big cat, and they're on the back of my book. But I was watching Max and Liz play fight one day. You know how dogs and cats like to get into it. And I thought to myself, when did dogs and cats first get on each other's nerves? I said, maybe when they were cooped up on Noah's Ark for a year. And it was like, bing, you know, the floating light bulb appeared above my head. I thought, what would that look like if Max is being brave out the Bruce and he comes from Scotland? And I love France, so Liz is Lisette Briand from Normandy, France. And they meet on the way to the Ark. And then this idea came, they foil a plot by a stowaway who's going to kill Noah and wipe out the human race. So these animals are chosen to work behind the scenes and save the day throughout pivotal points of history. And I go through the biblical years all the way up to, I'm in a 5-book saga on the American Revolution, and then doing C.S. Lewis in World War II. So these animals, it's a way to make history fun and come alive. My books are historical fiction fantasy in that order. So I do exhausting research, and that's the most fun part about being an author for me, is researching. And I love to go on site and, you know, travel and do all of that. And I exhaust all we can possibly know about something that happened in history. Then the fiction on top of that is when I bring a character to life, say George Washington for the American Revolution, or the Marquis de Lafayette, whatever. I have to know their character so well to bring words out of them that's plausible for what they would have said or done. And then the fantasy, this is where the animals come in. I look for those moments in history where we either don't know how or why something happened, and that's when I slide them in. You know, so I'm not altering the history, I'm making it real fun, because what kid is going to pick up a 600-page biography on the Revolution or Patrick Henry? Zero, but you put talking animals in there, right? And they'll follow you everywhere. So
that is true.
Yeah, so that's how I roll.
Well, that's awesome. And I do want to tell our viewers out there, listen, if you have questions, excuse me again with my voice, but if you have questions, make sure you put it in the chat. And Denise explained to you how to use our chat. Put your questions there, because we are going to do a Q&A right after I interview all 4 authors. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of each author or whomever you want to ask questions about. So make sure you put your questions there. We're looking for them. I know we got a couple in there right now. So we do know you like to travel, just as Sachetta does. And I know that you do a lot of research for your books. But Jenny, I heard a rumor that you got into trouble one time while researching Patrick Henry. in Virginia. So tell us what happened with that.
Yes. Yeah, I accidentally set off the alarm at Patrick Henry's house. It was not, it was not intended. So my 90-year-old friend Bob in Virginia, he had this private home where Patrick Henry was married inside this house. He said, "Hey, Jenny, want to get inside Rural Plains?" And I'm like, "Yes." So Bob and I go up to it, and he has a key. He opens the door, and we hear this beep, beep, beep. I'm like, "Bob, you got the code?" He said, "What code?" I'm like, "Bob, there's an alarm system in this house." Well, the state of Virginia was getting ready to turn this house into a museum, and they had installed a security system and not told Bob. So Bob and I are going in, and all of a sudden, whoa, whoa, and all of Hanover County heard this. So I'm like, "Bob, the police are going to come now." And sure enough, 2 sheriff deputies come barging in the door, and they're like, "Intruders!" And I'm like, I said, "90-year-old Brandon author." And they're like, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm Jenny Cote. I'm writing a book on Patrick Henry. Did you know he was married in this house?" So long story short, we went outside and we settled the matter, but there's a picture of me and these 2 sheriff deputies in front of,
Oh my God.
So, I tell kids, and when I go to schools and homeschool groups and I do workshops on creative writing, they think our research is so boring. And I tell them these insane, crazy stories of what happens. And I'm like, don't do as I do, do as I say. But it's an adventure, finding the
That was
story
an
behind the
adventure.
story. Yeah.
Mhm. I love it. That's funny. Nobody wants to run into that kind of adventure though. So thank God everything worked out. I appreciate that. So let's talk about your weekly podcast, which is hosted by none other than Max and Liz. Tell us all about that.
Right. Yes. We have Denny Brownlee, who is the voice talent who did the audiobook for The Art to Read the Fire Cloud. And there's 105 voices in that. And Denny is an amazing voice talent. He had the idea. He said, "Denny, why don't we start a weekly podcast where Max and Liz will host it? And then we play a chapter or 2 of the audiobook. And then you come in on Jenny's corner and you answer questions from readers or just give a little bit behind the scenes." And so that's been every Tuesday morning. We launched that when the shutdown happened in March. And so my website is epicorderafthe7.com, and you can see the podcast there. And it is so much fun. So it's a great way to interact with readers. And I asked readers, I said, "Hey, send me a voice memo and we'll play your voice on there." And so we're getting listeners from all over the world tuning in. And it's a great way also, if you don't have Audible or a way to get the audiobook, that you can listen to it. So we're up to episode 39, I believe. But and Denny also is the one who voiced the Revolution in the Key. So the first Revolution book, which is coming out any minute now. And when we finish the art podcast in around March, it's going to shift to the Revolution. And so it's a really fun thing that I invite you all to come along and take a listen to.
Well, I hope you do the voices of Max and Liz, because I like that little voice you did earlier. That was pretty good.
I know it's good. You'll have to listen to Denny, but it's a lot of fun and to banter with my characters. It's just magical for me,
Awesome.
to experience that. So it's great fun.
All right, guys, make sure you check that out. I'm going to check it out myself. Now, I know you mentioned about your Revolutionary Saga. And so I know that the Declaration, the Sword, and the Spy, that's your second book in that saga right there. So what is that about?
Well, like I said, I'm writing a 5-book set on the American Revolution. And book 1, The Voice, starts when the founders are kids. Patrick Henry's 7, George Washington's 11, because I wanted to show kids, look, before they were founding fathers, they were founding children. So I want to inspire kids, look, every generation has something remarkable to do, in your time, for your generation, for your country. So book 1 ends at the eve of revolution, and then the Declaration picks up. Book 2, it is Lexington and Concord through the Declaration of Independence. And I start bringing out my new emerging main character, the Marquis de Lafayette, and he's going to be the primary character in book 9, which I'm working on right now, which is the Marquis, the Escape, and the Forge. So these books are going to go through all of those time periods there. And yeah, I was supposed to launch this book in Lexington and Concord for Patriots Day, April 19th. And of course, book tour canceled, everything. So, you know, we're just going to have to roll with how things are. But yeah, revolutionary days.
Well, that's awesome. And I want you guys to look, hold your book up again, Jenny, for me. Now listen, look how thick that book is, and turn to the side. But the thing is, kids love her books. They do. They can learn a lot. They can have fun with them. And when you can get a kid to pick up, I have 5 daughters, just to share a little story with you. And my 5 daughters all love to read except for my youngest one, because I love to read. So I was always reading to my kids and everything. But my youngest did not, I couldn't find a book she liked. But it wasn't until she saw the book's Twilight, that was about as thick as that was the book that she loved, and that got her into liking to read. So a lot of times you have to, if you have children and you want to inspire them to love reading like we do, then you want to keep trying until you find that thing that works for them. So you're hearing from some great authors here, guys. So be sure to pick up their books if you can. Look them up. You have all their names, all their information, their bio and stuff. Look them up. Get their books from them because they are great. I'm so thankful for each one of you because you bring so much to the table. You really do. So thank you so much, Jenny. And we are going to move on. All righty. We're going to move on to Jesse Bird. Now, Jesse, he's an award-winning creator of children's books, I should say, like The Real Jungle Tales, Sunny Days, Dreamcatcher, and King Penguin. Jesse B, as he's known, he likes to create stories that matter. And so we're going to talk to Jesse. Hey, Jesse, welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Rhonda. I appreciate this.
Oh, no problem. We're glad you're here. So, Jesse, tell our viewers a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm a dual native of Oakland and New Orleans. Also spent some time in Atlanta. So I bounce between those 3 places a lot. Spent a lot of time in Atlanta this year. And to sort of give you, since we say as authors and storytellers that showing is better than telling, I'll show some embarrassing photos as well. But but in terms of sort of how I came into writing, without giving away something that Rhonda and I are going to explore more deeply a little bit later, thanks, Jenny. But this is me, Oakland, California, 1987. As Sachetta and Jenny touched upon, I did not know, I wasn't a lifelong person who always thought about that I was going to be a writer when I grew up. At this age, what I wanted to be most was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, which is a cartoon character. That was the edge of my aspirations. That's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then it was a psychologist for a little while, but then there was sort of a blank spot, which we'll talk about as well. But played basketball growing up. That's where I met my best friend here. We're still best friends to this day. Played baseball, but I was terrible at baseball. I mean, I could only catch and throw at the same hand. So I would have to put the glove on this hand, catch the ball, take the glove off, pull it out. At that point, everybody was safe. And so played basketball in high school. I show this picture here to show once upon a time I did have hair. Those days may be gone now. I can't grow this again, but I have proof just in case my children ask. So I was playing basketball, UC Santa Barbara. It's an hour north of LA. Jumped up for a rebound one day, came down, and I felt my knee shift like this. For any basketball fans, I was playing against Kawhi Leonard's team at the time. He went to San Diego State. Felt my knee shift like this. Came to find out I had something called a lateral meniscus tear. Now, 2 good things about this. One, this wasn't a career-ending injury. 6 to 8 weeks, I could come back if I wanted to. But 2, it gave me the first time in my life to get off the hamster wheel of playing sports, because sports was paying for my tuition. So sports was my job. I had to show up in order to continue going to that school and be able to pay for books and housing and stuff like that. So it was very much my job. And for that 6 to 8 weeks, I got to do some soul searching. And through that transition process, I did go through what I can now look back on and say was a mild depression. But what it helped me kind of figure out is, what do I want to do? What do I want to give? In the potluck of life, what do I want to bring? And during that time is when I kind of found storytelling, and especially storytelling for children, as what gives me electricity. It's what I can feel like I can do, even though, as Jenny mentioned, it's a ton of work, it's a ton of research, it takes a lot of love. But I always feel charged up and excited to go at it again, even if I just did it 12, 14 hours the day before. And so I feel like that part of enjoying your professional journey and the time spent in the process is such a gift, that I'm just so appreciative for. And that's how I really felt like that magnetism was something that should be acknowledged and appreciated. And so after I got out of college, I started working on my first children's book. It was actually a children's book novel about Harry Potter reading level age, so middle grade novel. And I started working for Google, and I'll pause here because I was in tech first before making the full transition, because we're going to talk about that later. But I just wanted to give you the really quick TLDR from like baby to 33-year-old Jesse, or at least Jesse at that point.
Awesome, I appreciate that. So I
Of
know
course.
you worked for Google. So what
Yes.
made you change and get into being a children's book writer?
So that's a fantastic question. So Google is, to me, it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I always say Google was my grad school. I learned a lot about people and processes and things like that. Let me actually pull that back up, what I just pulled down. So Google, 16 different cafeterias. Everything's free if you like tacos or burritos or salads or ice cream. You just walk into anywhere, just figure out which cafeteria is serving what you want. You walk in and you just take it, ice cream, everything. And so for fresh out of college, you know, I'm learning a lot. I'm meeting some really cool and down to earth people that are teaching me a lot also about business and about life. They had doggy daycare, so I got to meet all of these cute little dogs every day that were running around with their little name badges that said who they are, and a little picture of themselves like they're little people, which is awesome. They had self-driving cars, so you see these cars driving around campus with nobody in the driver's seat. Mind you, this is 2013. But to answer your question, Rhonda, what really caused me to give reflection, like Sachetta talking about her transition from finance, like Jenny talking about her transition from marketing. There was a story my mom told me when I was about 11 years old. There was a lady who was working at her office, and she worked for the government. Now, this lady had worked for the government for about 40, 45 years. She was about to retire, and she was saying all of it. She was saying she's going to travel, she's going to spend time with her kids, she's going to garden, she's going to cook, do all the things that she's been sort of waiting to do. Well, she retired one day and she passed away the next. And that's been like an impetus for our family to realize that you may not have as much time as you hope to have to tell your stories and to spend your time and energy doing the things that you're passionate about. Now, we all have bills and responsibilities. So I also tell people it's not a Disney movie. You make the transition at the right time for you and your family. But for me, I felt like young, hadn't started a family yet. I was like 23, 24 at this point. Decided to say, you know what, guys, I finished working on my novel. I'm going to try to raise some money to just get it published, crowdfund it. So I quit. Took about 2 or 3 months to raise the funds as a young, broke, fresh out of college author, and we did not reach our goal. It was unsuccessful, and it was an all or nothing campaign, so we got zero of the money, which means I had to go back to work. And I said, hey guys, remember me? Yeah, would you mind if I got a job? And so luckily they were nice enough to not only give me back my job, but they allowed me to do some other cool stuff and have even more responsibility in the company. And at this point, I really credit my family and friends because they were the ones who said, look, if you really love something, you feel like you're passionate about it, you can't stop because it didn't work out the first time you tried it. Look, you took a leap, you failed, but if you feel like this is what you're supposed to do, you have to keep charging on. And so I really credit them at that point. After about another year and a half, so 3 years total, quit again, tried to raise the money. We actually raised at that time, published first book, which won awards in Paris and Los Angeles. Second book won awards here in the States. And then the third book won the Wishing Shelf Award for Book of the Year in the UK. So we right now working on 5 different books, and independent as well as traditional published. So some stuff with Scholastic as well as some stuff with Apple out. And so I kind of like doing both because it gives me some freedom to try some wacky stuff that maybe a publisher's like, I don't see it. I don't see it. And so I just like to have fun because if I think it's worth it for the audience, then I want us to try. I don't mind throwing something out there that may be a little weird if I feel like the kids might have a good experience with literature, because that's the whole thing, especially with picture books. Like, we're just trying to build a relationship, and hopefully impart some things that are worth imparting. But yeah, that was my transition from Google. It was that realization that I could fall over today and there would be 100 people replacing me within the minute. And my life, I didn't bring my dish to the potluck of life. I didn't give what I felt I was here to give. And that frightened me.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that makes a difference. And guys, if you're listening to a lot of us have come from, and hold on, I want to bring my screen back to where I had it. One second. When you share it, it makes my screen do things. I got to put it right back where it was. But
Oh, sorry about that.
oh, that's okay. No, it's fine because we enjoyed that. We really did. That was awesome. And so, you know, what I was going to say is that a lot of what we're hearing is that even for all of us, some people have worked corporate America, some people have done, you know, worked a job, period, and but we still inspire to write. So we write. And I think that really the passion in writing, being an author and doing children's books, especially, the passion that's there is something that you want to do to make a difference. And so whether you have to hold on to your job at first, we don't want everybody to go walk away from their job and just say, hey, I'm giving it up, I'm going for my dream. You know, you have to be wise. So, you know, work and, you know, and then work on your dream of writing for children or whoever you know, whatever your genre is that you want to write for, until you're at that point where you can comfortably walk away from that job. But some people walk away on faith, and that's okay too. You walk away on faith, and if what you believe you're led to do, then things will work out in your favor. So thanks so much for sharing that. I do have a quick question for you too, Jesse. So I noticed that your books are like about all kind of different stories. So what makes you get the ideas for the stories that you write?
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna pull up some more stuff because I like visuals. I'm sorry guys. I apologize if this is like absolutely making you pull your hair out. But
No, it's okay.
so nice. So stories for me, at least as far as I've identified them, I'm sure the other authors can attest to this. A part of the process is a bit mystical. But for the three places that I can identify that they come from, one is experience. I call them the three E's. One is experience, things you've personally been through. Two is education, things that you learn in reading or research or in conversation with people. And number three is exploration. So for me, that's travel, you know, like Sachetta, like Jenny, travel, seeing new places, meeting new folks, new culture, new food, new ways to dress. All of these things are inputs for what could either inspire a story idea or add texture to a world that you're already working on. And so for me, from that third E, exploration, this is Dubai here, the tallest building in the world. This is where I am now. I'm currently in Dubai visiting my wife who's working on the company, and just traveling and seeing new things, having new experiences. This is dinner in the sky where you get to be lifted up by a crane 50 stories in the sky, you eat your dinner. And I'm afraid of heights. And so these experiences help me get outside of my comfort zone. And it also, I find when I go to write things for certain characters or certain scenes in a book, I can pull from memory instead of just pure imagination. Like I know what it's like to be up really high and be scared as a person who's afraid of heights. So if I have a character going through the same thing, it's really, really visceral. And then I can write from that experience. But yeah, just getting adapted to new cultures, having obviously experiences with animals. This is Giraffe Manor in Kenya. This inspired a story that'll be coming out in 2022. And these experiences and things that I learn, the people that I meet, all of that is, all of these things are ingredients that go into the story. And so these things, you know, the way I understand it, it goes into like this little seed and then you plant it, but you don't quite know what it's going to be. Sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's an entire series like Jenny's working on and has done. You know, sometimes it's just a part of a larger story. It's not an entire story on its own. It's more of a component. Maybe it's one character's backstory, or maybe it's just a piece of the book, but it's not the whole. But one thing I have learned is that these things, you know, some of them have their own growth process in terms of when they have matured, their own maturation process. Some books come together in 3, 4, 5, 6 months because it's a children's picture book. So mind you, the scripts are, you know, anywhere from 250 to 750 word count, which is actually, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, a lot more difficult because you don't have a lot of real estate. You can't burn any lines. You can't, you know, everything has to be dripping with purpose and also engagement. And so, yeah, these are some of the things that help inspire some of the stories that I create. Those three E's that I mentioned: experience, education, and exploration.
Awesome. I love it. And you know what's so interesting is that we have so far talked to three authors that do a lot of traveling. I love traveling. I used to have a travel business before everything happened. But
Nice.
it's amazing. I love that you guys bring your experiences to life in your books. So that's so Awesome. And so, Jesse, why did you wait so long to get a literary agent? And
Yeah.
do you feel, and one other part to that question too is, do you feel that everyone should have one?
Yeah, so I mean, the quick and dirty answer to that, one is, coming out of college, what I had to learn that just like playing basketball, writing was a skill set, it was a craft. And so even though I was passionate about it, there was a lot I had to learn about the technical aspects of actually getting ideas through in an efficient and effective manner. And so, coming out of college, I just knew I wanted representation. I had these ideas I had been sitting on for so long, and I was having a really hard time finding an agent. And so what I said was, okay, let me turn this around. Let me do this in the opposite way. Let me get better at my craft. Let me put work out. Let me show that I am serious about this and I can do the work and I can produce content. Let me actually prove it first, as opposed to asking for something on faith. I hadn't done anything at that point, which is fine. It's not, everybody has their own journey. But for me, I felt like I had a lot to learn. And I felt like if I want to get these stories out there and show that they're worthy and show that they connect, then I shouldn't wait on somebody to give me permission to do that. And then after a while, I just got so busy with the doing that I never really circled back to the looking for representation until recently with Regina Brooks and Serendipity Lit, and we're finalizing our representation agreement now. She has actually been the agent that I've if I wanted to be represented, she was like my golden star. Black woman who's doing phenomenal things in literary agencies. I mean, a lot of her authors in the children's book space are just, Kwame Alexander, Derek Barnes. I mean, these are, Caldecott and Newbery award-winning folks. So they're phenomenal. And I've always wanted to be a part of helping that house grow if I could. And so that was a part of the reason why I waited. One, because I felt like in the beginning, I wasn't quite ready, even though I wanted to be ready. My level of work just wasn't there enough from a professional standpoint. And then I just got really busy with the doing until I realized, man, I really need some help sort of shopping some of these properties. If I'm working on 5 books at a time with another 17 in the queue, who's going to be selling these things? I can't sell them because I'm writing all the time. And I don't necessarily have those pathways to have those conversations. So those are the reasons why it took me a while.
Okay. And I want to ask, and I got one more question for you, and then I want to ask Sachetta and I want to ask Jenny, and also Jennifer. Do you guys have a literary agent?
So I don't have an agent. My books are published through a hybrid model where I pitched it directly to the publisher, and they liked the idea, and we signed a book deal for 6 books, well, 3, and then renewed it 3 more. So I have tried working with an agent, but it has never really worked out. So right now I don't work with any agents.
Okay. And Jenny, I think you were saying something too. Yeah, unmute yourself.
I thought I hit it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Yes. I actually had a miraculous turn of events that an agent came to me, but before my children's book series, Jesse, kind of like you, this book bubbled up inside of me. It was this devotional book called Now I See, SEA, Spiritual Life Lessons from the Sea and the Coast. And it just kind of bubbled up out of me when I was at the beach. And I didn't know what to do with it. I was still in the corporate world. And so I self-published that. And that's a great way. I encourage people. You will get the feel of what it is like, just the mechanics of bringing a book together. And so I just had that sitting on our church bookshelf, and a literary agent was visiting our church and saw it. And then she came up to represent me. And I was like, or to approach me, and I said, well, I got this idea for this dog and this cat series. And so that is usually not the way it happens. And so she was my literary agent, but she directed me to a publisher at a writer's conference. And I want to encourage anyone, if you can't get a literary agent out of the box, go to a writer's conference, because you have the opportunity not only to meet potential agents, but also to pitch your story agentless across the table with a potential publisher. That agent retired. I since have another one now. But if you're going the traditional route, the barriers to entry to get in the door of traditional houses, it has gotten more competitive, where you kind of need that agent to slip in the door. But that's not the right path for everyone. Like Jesse said, everybody has a different path of what's going to work best, whether it's the hybrid model, whether it's full on self-publishing with Kindle Direct, with Amazon. A lot of my readers who've grown up now, who want to give it a try, they're going and they're publishing their books on Kindle, and it's awesome. And again, like you said, Jesse, you can prove, look, I am serious about this. Look, I did the due diligence, I did the work. So I highly encourage you all to do that if you're just dabbling with this publishing industry.
All right, thank you so much. And Jennifer, I know we haven't gotten to your interview yet, but do you have any comments as far as literary agents and all that fun stuff?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, actually, I have had 2 literary agents. The first one I got through, anybody know Manuscript wish list, MSWL, if you do the hashtag on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. I found her through there. And I mean, I can talk a little bit more about how that happened. And then, you know, people say having an agent is like a relationship. It is. Like you don't know. Everyone's like, how do I know if this is the right agent? You don't know until you sign, and then you start working with them, and then you may be like, this isn't working out, right? Which is like a relationship. You go out with someone, you're like, oh, it's great for the first 3 weeks, and then you're like, oh my gosh, no, right? Now I love my former agents. Don't get me wrong. They're both amazing. They just weren't a good fit for me, right? And it's like what we've all talked about. Everybody has a vision for what you want out of your career. I don't know that my agent and I saw each other on the same page. So the second agent was kind of like Jenny. I was literally on faculty at the New Jersey SCBWI conference. So we're at the faculty dinner on Friday night before, you know, everybody comes in the next day, and I'm sitting with an agent and a couple other authors, and we just start chatting, and we're all talking about the projects we've done and all this kind of stuff. And as we get up to walk out, the agent walks with me, and she goes, you know, why isn't your agent handling some of these things that you're doing? And I said, well, I'm not agented. And she looks at me and goes, would you like to be? And I went, well, oh, okay, let's chat. So we went and had a drink, and, you know, kind of, so that's how I got that agent. And that worked fairly well for about 3 years. But then, you know, things changed. Like her agency got really big, right? So then it got like, I didn't feel like everybody wants to be like, I'm the one that gets the attention, right? Like you want your agent to be there for you, and this, and I'm not blaming her, right? This is life in this business. You're gonna have agents who have like 50 clients, and you are gonna have to be the one that's like, hey, it's me. And so things just kind of went like this, and we left on very good terms. But I kind of got like you know, like you've all said, a little like, I want to do this myself. I mean, I started doing this myself, did this myself for 6 years. And then I wanted to be, I've made so many connections with so many editors for all these conferences. I've run conferences, and all of these editors will take my submissions without an agent. And I'm like, I'm doing 90% of my own footwork. Why am I paying an agent? Like I could, so I actually have found a literary lawyer, and she does the contracts. So for right now, that's what I'm doing. I mean, I have friends that are agents, and several of them have said, hey, you're not agented. Do you want to chat? And I was like, I don't know. What do you got? Kind of thing. So I think you can do it both ways. Exactly.
Yes,
you know, especially, and I'm going to talk about nonfiction. And as a nonfiction writer, you can absolutely do this without an agent.
Okay. Well, that's some great advice from 4 of our beautiful authors, guys, that we have here. Very intelligent people, very successful people. So that's why I want you guys to listen to what they have to say. And so that can go either way. You know, you can choose to have a literary agent or not. It depends on what works for you. So we've got some great feedback on that. And Jesse, back to you. And then we're going to be with Jennifer in just a moment. Jesse, let me ask you this question. So what was the most difficult point in your career thus far as a children's book writer?
I would say that there are probably 2 points. One, I shared with you guys a little bit earlier, and that was the very beginning of the journey, because I felt like I was pivoting away from basketball and then pivoting away from what was considered a good job at Google, to sort of go into the wilderness of creative writing, right? And so I felt like that was really difficult. But also, even after you've taken that leap, like I've had like 2 jobs in between. Even after I left Google, I worked for Ernst & Young for a short stint as their editor-in-chief for an in-house thing. What I tried to do at each turn was try to do something writing centric, because I still wanted to improve. Even if I'm going into corporate America, even I want to do copywriting, I want to do business writing, I want to do something. So at least I'm writing and I can get better, which I feel like is something that I think is a secret nugget that I didn't know at the time. Business writing is really, really helpful for creative writing, I found, because business writing asks you to be very precise, very efficient. What are you talking about? What's the point? What's the call to action? What do you want people to do at the end of this particular piece of copy? And as Jenny alluded to earlier, which is so important, you know, there's storytelling and there's story selling, and they're both sides of the same coin. And business writing really gets you your gears going for that story selling side. And so in terms of backup book copy, in terms of blurbs on like Amazon, like how are you going to get somebody to give your work a chance? That is selling with words. And so the business writing component, my stints in that really taught me a lot. But I would say that's probably been a part of the hardest part, is keeping your eye on what you're here to do. Even as some of these other carrots get dangled or things get really hard, financially, you know, otherwise, you know, what is it that you want to give? You know, what is it what do you feel like you want to give to others? And really keeping your eye on service throughout your storytelling, because I do think storytelling is a public service. If it's really coming from the heart, it expands, it gives access, it gives, you know, perspective, it gives dimension, it helps us relate to each other in different ways. So yeah, those are my hardest parts.
All right, great. And then real briefly, because you know, we as authors, we can talk. And I love sharing, but you know, we're on a time constraint. But real briefly, we know that with Sachetta, her cat was her inspiration to write. We know with Jenny, her cat and dog was her inspiration. Briefly, who inspired you to write?
I have to go back to my mom. So some of you may be familiar with her. Her name is Mary Honeybee Morrison. She's a New York Times bestselling adult fiction author. She started writing when I was 11. That story that I told you about her coworker passing away was what inspired her to take the leap, and also what kind of knocked me on the head later in life. But ironically, I didn't write because she was writing. So I ran away from writing for a long time because I was like, oh, that's mom's thing. I need to find my thing. And later on, I realized that writing is a very vast ocean and storytelling is a vast ocean. And if it's for you, it's just as silly to do it because somebody else is doing it. And it's just as silly not to do it because somebody else is doing it, if that's what you want to do. So my mom.
Okay, awesome. Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you for sharing with us, Jesse. And guys, I do want to say, I know you are asking some questions in the chat to the authors already, but remember, we're gonna answer those questions when we do our Q&A. So be patient, and we're gonna try to get as many answers to your questions as possible. But now we're going to talk with Jennifer Swanson, who is our next author, and she is bringing up the rear, and I love her. She's so amazing. Jennifer has presented at the World Science Festival and the Atlanta Science Festival twice, okay? And twice each at both places. So she's also taking the audience on a wild and wonderful tour of outer space and the ocean. Now, I love stuff. Science used to be my favorite subject when I was growing up. Yay. And I love that, yay. And then also at the Library of Congress and the National Book Festival, Jennifer challenged her audience to decide if they had what it takes to become a human crash test dummy. Now I'm interested in hearing about that. I don't know if I want to be a crash test dummy.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's fun.
I do. Okay, it might be fun. Well, Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I have loved science my whole life. I started a science club in my garage when I was 7. My mom gave me a microscope. So like Jesse, I was inspired by my mom to follow my path. I grew up with 3 brothers. So at the time, I never thought about this, but I never realized how I was never told that I couldn't do science or that I couldn't pursue science as a girl or anything. I was, I did sports. I did everything my brothers did. And Then I went to the U.S. Naval Academy and I studied chemistry. I was a chemistry major there. And everybody there takes 3 years of engineering, even if you're a history major or an English major. And, you know, that's where I sort of shifted my thinking, because if you look at a lot of my books, a lot of them are kind of, I'm a STEM author, science, technology, engineering, and math, but I'm really more in the engineering technology side of things. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love trees and nature, but I want to know how it works. I want to, like my book over here, Beast Slave Bionics, is about how you look at animals and you turn them into robots, or you find the part of the animal that can be turned into a robot to help humans. This is where my brain goes. I've pretty much been writing my whole life, but I only started getting published about 10 or 12 years ago. And I started in educational publishing. So I'm a nonfiction author. I write nonfiction for kids. But I started writing, doing lots of work for hire. And that is a great way to get into publishing, because you learn by working for others and you have the tight deadlines and you work with all different publishers and all different editors. So that's a really great way to start. And then I got my first break with National Geographic Kids. I wrote the book Brain Games, which goes with their hugely popular TV show. And that was how I broke into the trade publishing world. So since then, I think I'm up to 40, 45 books, something like that. I've helped create series. I do a lot of what they call IP work, where the publisher comes up with the idea and then goes and hunts you down. They give you a one-liner, like, I want a book about this, and then you have to create the whole book around that. So I do a lot of that work for that too.
That sounds fun and challenging. Well,
Yeah,
thank
it
you.
is.
So we know that you said you're a STEM writer, and you explained to us what STEM means. But so why did you write about science then? What inspired you to write about science?
Well, like I said, I'm that kid who, I mean, I grew up with encyclopedias. Who grew up with encyclopedias? Please let lots of people raise their hands. All right, good. We had the whole World Book encyclopedias. And I was that kid who was always asking my mom, how does that work? Why is it that way? What is this? And she was like, go look it up. So I spent my life reading the encyclopedias and doing research, which we've all talked about. And for me, it's just fascinating. Science is everywhere. It's in everything we do. But science is also really cool because it's diverse. The more diverse the people that you get that have different backgrounds, come from different cultures, different ways of thinking, and you get them together to solve a problem, the better science is. I mean, we don't have to talk about what's going on with the pandemic, but you look at all of the ways they're trying to solve this problem, and the more people they can bring together to do that, that's the other thing I think that science is so amazing. And it's where we're headed with technology. Like I just along those lines, if I also started a science podcast. I also started a pandemic podcast. Yay, science for kids. Solid for Kids, which I can talk about in a second. But so I'm interviewing researchers, and the one we interviewed last week, she works on self-driving cars, which is my big thing. I would kill to go. Jesse, I can't tell you how many times I emailed Google saying, I'm an author, can I come and ride in your self-driving car? Yeah, that was crickets. So if you can make that happen, you and I need to talk. Like seriously, that's my dream.
You got it, Jesse.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just, that's my passion. It's like what we've all talked about, science and STEM. It's my passion. That's what I write about.
Awesome. So how do you choose your topics? When you take the things that you love, science, which is your passion, and all the things you're in, this whole STEM thing, how do you choose your topics?
Well, this is where you put your business hat on, because everything that I would love to write about is out there. How do you sell that idea to a publisher, right? If you're going to pick the traditional route, you have no choice. You must think about the hook. You must think about how will this sell. You also, since I write STEM and I love editors, don't get me wrong, but a lot of them are English majors and maybe are not so thrilled with science, right? So you have to find a way to hook them. So I'll give you an example, if I can, of my book, Save the Crashless Dummies. It's the one like way up there. Okay, first of all, to give a shout out, the illustrator of this book is Tamika Grooms.
Okay.
Yes, yay, who is an SCBWI Southern Breezer just like me. So this is a Breezer book, and it was done by Peachtree Publishing, which is in Atlanta. So this is a, there you go. There's all of that. So yay us. But this was my obsession, is I wanted to write about the self-driving car. I wrote this book for an educational publisher about 4 years ago, or 5 or 6 years ago, about self-driving car, and I was like obsessed. And I said, this is the coolest type of engineering I've ever seen. How do I pitch it? So I went to workshops and whatever, but it was like, I mean, if I just say, this is a self-driving car, you're all like, okay, right? Anybody think like, yay, besides me? You're all like, okay, maybe, there you go, I got one hand. But if I say, what if we change the lens and we say, this is called Save the Crash Test Dummies, the history of car safety engineering told through the life of a crash test dummy. Now, how many people are interested, right? I still don't see enough hands, people. Come on, it's science. There you go. Thank you. But my point is that's also, unfortunately, maybe a part of this business. You can all have the most amazing ideas for stories, but if you want to pick the traditional route, you have to find the awesome hook. And that's what I do so I get an idea, and then I think, and then I do lots of research. I go on Amazon and see other topics that are out there. I see how it's done. And I try to come up with a really cool hook. Usually my hooks are in my titles. If you look at my, because that's how hard it is sometimes to sell STEM books. It has to be in the title right there.
Awesome. So speaking of how hard, how difficult is it to not only sell, which you explained to us, but how difficult is it to write, especially like about science or any of your STEM books? How difficult is that?
Yeah, like any book, it takes a lot of research. I read, literally depending on papers by scientific papers, with all of the scientific language. My bibliographies range anywhere from 15 to 30 pages. I interview scientists, I interview engineers, I go places too. Last year in 2019, it was like I got all my big travel year, because we can't go anywhere this year, and I went to Geneva, Switzerland twice to visit CERN, which is the Large Hadron Collider. So if any of you ever watched The Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon wanted to go, I got to go there, and I got to tour underground in CERN. And that's the other thing that I want to tell you, is that, first of all, that's practically unheard of. Not many people get that honor to tour underground in CERN. It's just the very private, secret thing. We had to fill out background checks and all this kind of stuff. I never thought they would say yes. So what everybody else has said, take that leap. We visited there with me and my family, and we were able to go to like the visitor thing, and then they were having this big underground thing. So I just emailed the PR person. I was like, hey, this is who I am. This is my website. This is what I do. I'd really like to come back, because they were only letting like 200 people in. I go, is there any way you can make sure I'm one of those 200 people before I buy my, $1,800 plane ticket? So, because I'm coming. And she emailed me back and said, well, not only, she's like, I don't want you to come that weekend, but if you come the next weekend, we'll give you your own private tour. And there was much screaming and jumping up and down and dancing. And so put yourself out there.
Tour, that's awesome.
Yeah. So put yourself out there. You never know. They might say yes.
Yes, I love it. I love it. So what advice would you have for aspiring our viewers here that are aspiring to write? Well,
so I can talk specifically to nonfiction, since that's what I do. first of all, let me give you a little hint. Nonfiction picture book biographies, which you might, everyone be, yeah, they're kind of overdone. So if that's what you want to do, you might want to rethink a little ways. But there's other ways to get into it. One of the best ways to get into nonfiction, although this year is not the best year for it, like I said, is to get into work for hire and start with some of the educational publishers like Capstone, let's see, Enslow, there's a bunch of them. Go to the SCBWI website and it lists a lot of them, and you can submit to them and you get writing creds, like what Jesse was talking about. Get your writing credentials and start there. Then when you submit to the trade publishers, you're going to have something to show them, writing samples to show them, hey, this book came out. I would also, if you're going to write nonfiction, don't write it straight on. Do like what Jenny and Sachetta have done, which is come at it from a different angle, right? Just turn it upside down a little bit. And that makes it more fun, more interesting, and more unique, and it'll stand out. And publishers will be interested.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Jennifer.
Thanks for having me.
You and I hit it off.
Yes,
over the phone,
we did. We had a great conversation.
So I appreciate all my authors. So guys, guess what? It is time for our Q&A section. And this is where you get to unmute yourself and you can ask the question. And I'm going to start with Elizabeth Appleby. Elizabeth, go ahead and ask your question. I know you talked about something about the process that they went through, and this was to all the authors. So what was your question, Elizabeth? Oh, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of questions that I put into the chat. Let me just go through them and then.
Yeah, give me one question now, and then we'll give someone else a chance.
Okay, well, the first one was about the process of finding a publisher once you already have a manuscript. How do you decide who to send it to?
And any of my authors, you guys can respond to that, 1, 2, or all 4 of you. Who would like to answer her question?
I mean, so here's what I do. When I have an idea, I do, and some people laugh at me and say, I can't believe you do all this. I do a lot of research. I've been doing this for 10 or 12 years, so I now have an idea of what each house sort of publishes. And that's what you want to do, because you want to, like Nat Geo has their own voice. And I know that Millbrook Press mostly only does like chapter books and picture book kind of thing. And so, each one of these things. So if you do your research, and again, SCBW has a thing called the book, right? They still have that, right? I think. And then it has a list of publishers, and I would just spend hours going through and kind of learning what each publisher is looking for. I said that at one of the workshops I gave, and one person looked at me and goes, I'm never going to do that. And my response was, well, okay. I mean, that's my process. You can do whatever you want.
Well, and Jennifer, you're spot on so many things. Thank you for your program. I mean, everything about it was just rocked, and it's just so much truth. And yes, Elizabeth, great question. First of all, understand that it's really like a dating game. If you're going after a traditional publisher, they know exactly what they want, like Jennifer said. And so if you can't get a literary agent, really get in front of a publisher in your 15-minute little spiel at a writer's conference. But this is the deal. They don't want to see your whole book. Okay, this is what a publisher is looking for. They are looking for a marketable author as much as a marketable manuscript. Okay. And they want to know, exactly like Jennifer said, a summary of your book. They want like 3 sample chapters, at least in my genre of what I'm looking for. How are you going to market it? What makes your book different? What makes you stand out? Why should they invest money to pour into you? And how are you as an author going to beat the pavement and get out there and market it? Are you going to speak? What are your ideas? And so they're looking not just for a great manuscript, but they're looking for you, for marketable author too. And I will tell you this too. I will prophesy over you. If you go the traditional route, you will 100% likelihood be rejected. It's nothing personal. It is a dating game. And here's the deal. When I went to my first writers conference, I went to the Blue Ridge Mountain Writers Conference at Ridgecrest, North Carolina, and my publisher identified a couple of good matches for me, and AMG International Publishers is the one that she kind of geared to me for my genre, and they're the first ones that I met with. And so I, research on making a book proposal, and you'll see all these elements and what they're looking for. And Jesse, to your point, having written business plans and business writing, that prepared me. I had 2 marketing degrees. I knew how to do a jam up book proposal. And so, spend some time, do your research, know who you're marketing to, and present them with this, this package. But remember, Dr. Seuss was rejected 23 times, J.K. Rowling 6 times. Okay. So it's part of the gig. And all those editors are just pulling their hair out that how could I have missed this thing? But it's like the best advice I can give you is that, I personally said, I have God as my author with an A. And I was like, okay, you help me pick. And it's like, okay, when you're rejected, my deal was, okay, well, it's not them rejecting me, it's God rejecting them. It's like, oh, bless their hearts, they weren't the chosen ones, so it's just like you want to find the right match for you. And mine was not a big New York house. Okay, my perfect match was a mid-size, smaller publisher. There's no one size fits all. And I'm going to be quiet because I could keep going.
No, and I want to add to that too. I agree with what Jenny is saying too, because you're hearing a lot of great advice, but it has to be what's going to work for you. And sometimes you just want to find that publisher that you're supposed to be connected with. I have a publishing company. So a lot of people that come to me, they say, it's something about you that I know I need you to be the person that publishes my book. So to me, that's like the most valuable thing. And just like how I think Jennifer said as well, like when she was talking about literary agents, but you have to go with the person or the company that you feel the most comfortable with for your books, because there's a different fit, as it was mentioned, for each person. So you have to do what works for you. And so we're going to go ahead and do some more questions. And guys, I needed you guys, if we can, because we don't have a lot of time. So we're going to have to do like some real quick, brief answers. I love you all, and I love what you're sharing, but just so we can get more questions in. Okay, so B. Brown, she had a question for you, Jenny. B. Brown, what was your question for Jenny?
Hi, Jenny. I wanted to know, what were your go-to sites for research?
Well, it kind of depends on which books you're talking about. The 6 biblical, tons of biblical commentaries and all that for my American Revolution. I actually have a current library of 300 books on the American Revolution. This is just my personal library because I've been researching the Revolution a dozen years. I've been to every site. Like Josie said, I go on site. I've been to every major site of the American Revolution. I have been to museums. I have exhausted the people at Colonial Williamsburg at every historic site. I've driven them insane with my questions. And also, Jennifer, to your point, yeah, my bibliography is in the back. It's just pages and pages long. And research is so important. Get to the site where whatever you're writing about happened, because it's a game changer when you can see where it happened. And I also like to write on site. I actually wrote, in my 4th book, The Roman, the 12, and the King, this is the life of Christ told within the story of Handel writing the Messiah. I actually flew to London and sat in Handel's composing room to write the scene of Handel writing Messiah in the room where it happened. And again, like Jennifer said, ask big for things. What they can say no, right? But ask big. You will be amazed the doors that people open. The Foundling Hospital, they let me hold a 1759 copy of Handel's Messiah because I asked. So just go out there and get out of just books. Go experience, like Josie said, with the big E.
Yeah, the best that we
Thank
can.
you.
That's awesome advice. So Darren Smith, he has a question for anyone to talk about. Darren, what's your question? Darren Smith.
Hello, I'm here.
Okay.
My question is, can someone talk about maybe their creative process and how they create when they're experiencing some type of a block?
So one of my authors, if you want to take that question.
Sure. Sure, I'll take it. So for me, one of the biggest things that I feel like I've learned is that your ability, your talent didn't disappear just because you hit a creative block. Often I find that I need more information and more input. So to what Jenny and Jennifer are saying, research, go back and look at it, world building, look at the world, do research on that, do research on like your characters, do interviews with your characters. That information becomes, it's like gas in a tank, it becomes fuel to then you'll be surprised how many ideas you come up with if you go back to the sort of the researching phase. And just really quickly to piggyback on that. So at that point, then I make sure for children's picture books, at least I put everything into a story grid as opposed to just a document, because I need to know how the words and the illustrations are going to come together on each page. It works in scenes, almost in photographs, right? And so I need to know the core essentials of how this thing is going to flow so I can get a 30,000 foot view of any like hitches or holes, any obvious hitches or holes in my story. Or, if I'm hitting the same mood 6 pages in a row, it's going to fall flat because I haven't changed the mood. So I'm losing the impact of what I'm trying to do. So after, getting stuck for me is research. And then from there, it's a lot of structuring to make sure that what I have in my mind actually translates in a way that makes sense on the page. And so.
I love all you guys. You are so organized and serious about your craft. I appreciate each of you.
Yeah, and Darren, absolutely, I love your grit. And Darren, research is the key, and I do extensive detailed outlines. It took me 6 months just to do the outline for my Revolution book. And it's like it's a roadmap, it's your GPS of how to get to point A to point B. And usually when I get writer's block, it's either because I've got too much information, which is always my problem. Since I was a kid, I over-research, I get too much. And I was like, okay, that's why they get so long, because I put the kitchen sink in here. Or I don't know enough yet. And I've got to stop what I'm doing and go research more.
Okay, great. And then we have Leslie Johnson that has a question for everyone. Leslie, what's your question?
Hi, part of it was answered, but the one I'm still curious about is writing under pen names and anonymously. I don't know how much that would work with nonfiction, but with fiction, wondering what's the current trend on that with such a heavy reliance on social media. I noticed you said, Jenny, you have to sell yourself as well. You have to be marketable as well. Wondering, have people just totally moved away from the anonymous pen name?
I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure. Maybe someone else.
I mean, no, I do know people who have several names, and I know people who write under a certain name for nonfiction, a certain name for fiction. That's something, if you're working with the publisher, you're going to work out with them, because they're going to want, yes, they're going to want promotion for certain things, different, I don't know that it's done so much anymore. More of what I'm hearing about is ghostwriting, particularly for nonfiction. A lot of these books that are written by celebrities are not all written by the celebrity. There's usually some type of ghostwriter helping them. Not true for all of them. There are some celebrities that write their books, but for nonfiction particularly, they might have a ghostwriter. I've co-written with a couple of experts, engineers, scientists, or whatever. So there's that work. I think it's up to you what you want to do. The one thing I decide, I don't ever want to ghostwrite, ever. I have if you read any of my books, I have a very distinctive voice, and I'm not giving that to anybody else. So that's my choice. But there are people, I do know people that have several different names. So, but you work it out with your publishers.
Mm-hmm. All right. And so Taylor Gerard, she has a question for everyone. Taylor, go ahead and share your question.
Yeah. Hey guys, so when do you know a manuscript is finished? For example, like at what point do you feel like you no longer need or want or will take any more critiques from a group or an agent, editor, or whoever you decide it is indeed that final draft? And then how has that evolved throughout your career?
So Taylor, my editing process is finished when I'm close to the deadline. I don't think it's ever done. You know, you always think you could improve it, but you are just hitting against that date and you have to get it out to the publisher. But I go through about 3 to 4 months of editing with my editor and my illustrators to just make sure everything is the way we want it to be and it's in a somewhat presentable and acceptable form. But like I said, it's never over.
Right. We could edit forever, ever and ever and ever and ever. And I still do. And so I think, you know, you're right. The deadline is the really the cutoff thing. But, you know, you'll know when the story is complete, you know, and that's one reason why I usually write the beginning and the ending of a book before I write the middle, because I have to bookend myself because Jenny could just go on forever. And also page count. My publisher said, Jenny, please try to keep it at 600 pages. And I know my pen's out of control. When I start getting over that, then it's like, I got to cut it. And I have split the Revolution book now into 5 books. It was going to be 1.
That's a lot of writing, Jenny.
If I can just say one thing, if you think it's done, stop sending it out. You are not going to get the people are not going to come back and say, oh, it's done. No, they're going to keep editing it because you keep sending it for critique. So by definition, you're sending it for critique. People are going to keep finding problems with it. Right. So when you think it's done, stop sending it to your critique group.
True.
That's my 2 cents.
All right, great. We're going to take a couple more questions. And we have a question from Petula Lloyd. And this is for everyone. Petula?
Hi. Surprised me. It's Petula.
Oh, okay. Petula. Sorry.
If I remember my question, I've always written novels. Well, that's what I've been working on for years. Nothing, you know, they're just out there, nothing finished yet. And then I all of a sudden have this children's book series. I think it's great. I finished some manuscripts. I think I'm ready to query and send for an agent. How do I not tank myself because I still want to be a novelist. I thought that was going to be my thing. You know, I'm trained journalist and I was like, I'm going to write a great novel one day. And now children's books. So how do you keep your, I guess, identity for those kind of things, Joe?
Jesse, you want to answer that one? That sounds like made for you.
Yeah, absolutely. To be completely honest, I wouldn't worry too much about pigeonholing yourself. I do believe that writing credits are a positive momentum no matter what. And as touched upon earlier, you can always write under a pseudonym. So my mom wrote for a long time under 2 houses, under Grand Central and under Kensington, and wrote under one name for Grand Central and another name for Kensington. So if you're worried that your identity is so wrapped up in children's books and you just kind of want to separate the 2 sort of thought processes, your brands, then you can always roll with a pseudonym. But I mean, to me, you roll with your strongest story, you roll with what you think is going to really resonate with the audience and the publishers and the industry the most if you're going the traditional route. Because I do think having something done is miles better than working on something. I can't, like, as they mentioned about the conferences, you know, going to ALA and stuff like that, which I highly recommend. So many opportunities have come from FaceTime with people that you can never get on the phone, it's really hard to get an email back from them, but you can actually speak to them for 3 minutes at a conference and literally change so much. And so I recommend that. But yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of that, because having something done in any form is so much better, because you can show your work instead of talking about your ideas in sort of this, you know, conceptual space.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Great. And guys, we have some, when you, to my authors, if you get a chance, some people just have comments on there, like where they're thanking you or they're They appreciate certain things that you gave them. So I'm not going to read all those, but you guys can look through them, and remember this is recorded, so you can always go back to. So Kara has been one of my authors I've featured at one point too. Kara, would you like to ask your question? And this is for everyone.
Hey, I was just curious how you balance being a hybrid author, publishing traditionally and publishing, self-publishing. How does that balance work for you? Is there something specific that you're doing on certain days of the week and then doing a different type of work another day of the week? I'm just curious.
I'll take that. Being a hybrid author, and I also have my other job, which is writing about food and travel for other magazines. I'm not as organized as Jessie. I don't have spreadsheets for every day of the week, but it's kind of like taking days as is required. And some weeks, especially during the fall, I have more author visits, book festivals, and lots of FaceTime versus during Christmas holidays, there's nothing really going on. So that's when I'm actually researching my next book and writing my outlines and story ideas for what I'm going to do next year. So it kind of changes day by day. There is really no set formula. The only thing that's constant is marketing. If you are a hybrid author, I think this applies to everybody now. Even if you're traditionally published, you have to be marketing all the time, whether it's updating your social media pages, sending out newsletters, or reaching out to schools or people you have spoken with before. That's kind of something you have to do year round now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, this is the last question we're going to take, and then we're going to hear from Sharon from the Society of Children Book Writers and Illustrators. She's our regional advisor. And so our last question is going to be from Jen Hall, and this is for everyone. Jen, go ahead with your question. Jen Hall.
Hey, sorry, my dog had to go out.
Oh, okay. Well, we know you're an animal lover too then.
I am. She's a rescue and she's a hot mess. I've typed a lot in here. Which question was it about?
Well, you get to ask one of those questions for now, because it'll be our last question for this evening.
I mean, I think a lot of it has been answered in what people have been talking about, because I was curious about self-publishing and hybrid and everything. And I think people have answered it, and then especially about the marketing and everything. So I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Let me see if I got one other one then, since you are done. Let's comment. Let's see. Might have gotten everyone. All right, well, let's just, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, as a California girl, though, I just wanted to give a shout out to Jessie. So.
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Well, I would like to introduce Sharon to you, Sharon Pagram, and she is our with Southern Breeze, and she's going to tell you about Southern Breeze and why it is such a good idea, especially if you want to write children's books, why you should be a part of our organization. Let me tell you, all my authors here, including myself, as you know, as Denise mentioned, I'm the local liaison for the Gwinnett County area, but we love being a part of this organization. It is worldwide and it is amazing. It's a great opportunity for you. So without further ado, here's Sharon.
Hi, thank you everybody. Thanks all the authors today, and thank you Rhonda. This has been a wonderful conversation. So much good inspiration and information, and such a good variety on the panel today. It's been just a little touch of everything. I also want to introduce my partner, Lisa Stauffer, who is a new co-regional advisor for Southern Breeze. Did she turn on her camera? There she is. Wave, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
So SCBWI, I know a lot of us are here. I see some familiar names, but a lot of unfamiliar names as well. It's the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is a large and awkward abbreviation. And it is the largest and oldest professional organization for people who want to write or illustrate or translate for children. And it's huge. It started in California and is still headquartered there, but is international with regions in, I don't even remember how many countries, and all over the United States. We support educating people to help improve their craft. We support connecting people with the publishing industry and increasingly with tools to self-publish. And we try to build community for children's creators because it's a lonely business, it's discouraging, there's a lot of rejection along the way. And it's just really nice to find your people who are passionate about creating for children and are chasing down some of the same crazy trails that you are. And they actually want to hear all about your great idea and what you've been doing. And not like your friends who are, you know, they're asking, but you know, they really only want to hear so much. These are the people who want to hear the whole deal. So Southern Breeze is the region that covers Georgia, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. And if you are a member of SCBWI, you are a member automatically of the region you live in. So there's no second, you don't have to separately join Southern Breeze. We claim you if you move in, you're ours. And so obviously you can do, well, it's much more relevant now that you can do programming in any region. You can attend events now that we're all online. There's like, you go to scbwi.org and look at the regional webinar list, and there is always something going on somewhere. But ordinarily, in normal times, we have local events that this would be happening in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and we'd have something in Savannah sometimes. And now everything is online. We usually have one conference a year, which is in person, which coming up in March will be happening also online. I can do a little bit of preview about that. The big central weekend for writers is going to be March 12th and 13th. For illustrators, it's going to be a little bit later in April. And I say the central weekend because both the writing and illustrating events are going to stretch out this year over time. We're doing, for writers, an emphasis on critique, where there'll be a couple of different critique opportunities centered on a weekend of seminars about how to use your critique information and all sorts and other subjects as well. And for illustrators, we're going to do a series through the winter of getting your work ready for presenting to a professional, and then a day of masterclass instruction similar to what our in-person Illustrators Day would be. So registration for those are coming in early January. Information will be coming up on, I put in the chat, southern-breeze.scbwi.org is where the local programming information comes up. So that's my basic information. Why you should join us is we're the place to be for information, companionship, community, that craft information.
So true, and support.
And support. Emotional support. My own critique group, we joke that we're half therapy session and half critique at this point, because there's 4 of us and we've been meeting together for about 10 years. And how I know when to quit editing myself and send it out, it's when they say, would you quit bringing this to us? It's good, send it. So sometimes those of us who don't ever quit editing need a push from that community. So thank you, Rhonda, for setting this up, and thank you, Denise, for having us. It's so nice to see you virtually.
Yes, and you're welcome, Sharon. And I'd like to first of all say thank you too to the Gwinnett Public Library for always supporting what the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators do, especially here, like I said, in Gwinnett. You guys have been wonderful to us, and we really appreciate you, Denise and Miriam. And I want to say a thank you to all my beautiful authors that have shared so much. It's been very enriching. And then, of course, Sharon, I love her. She's amazing. She's very supportive of her local liaisons and then anyone else that's in our region. So thank you, Sharon. And thank you, lastly, but not least, is to all of you who have joined us in this. I hope you've been inspired to go out there and just continue to write, and that you've gotten some great information that can help you on your journey. So again, we want to thank you all. And we're going to end now with thank yous and happy holiday to everybody. I hope everybody has a blessed holiday and that we're all safe during this whole pandemic. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Right. Y'all take care. It was an honor and a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you.